Last time, I threw down the gauntlet with an introduction to my latest project, adapting 1987's Metal Gear into a short story. This time, I'll be talking about how to turn a digital sprite of a few dozen pixels into an arbiter of sexual magnetism. How, you ask? I'll get to that, but first, why? My girlfriend has never heard of Metal Gear. I'd love to introduce her to the series, and it can be a big ask to take someone back to the MSX2 if they entered gaming with the likes of Horizon Zero Dawn. Well, why not just have her start with the third game and read the recaps like a normal person? Well, like I said, I have a big soft spot for this series. I like Solid Snake, and I want her to be able to experience Metal Gear Solid as the third entry in the series, an experience I never got to have, as MGS1 so often gets crowned even within the series as the first, relegating Metal Gear 1 and 2 to sort of ancestral Easter eggs. And yet, Solid is such a sequel to both! I remember one of my good high school chums borrowed my copy at my incessant behest and called me the night he started, thinking he had done something wrong because the world of MGS1 is already so big, with these references to all these things that had happened before. I realized only after the fact, after giving him the old, oh don't worry about it, this was the first one that was released in the States, that I never got to experience the story as intended, experiencing Solid as the epic completion of an original trilogy, full of returning characters and earth-shattering revelations that, even while potent out of context, act as these incredible third-act twists building on the foundation of what came before. So yeah, I'll never get to experience the first Metal Gear as the first Metal Gear, with no idea what winding road of beautiful melodrama lies ahead. But if I can play my cards right, my girlfriend just might. Either that, or she'll hate the series for being too boyish, violent, crass, and anime. Which, may be fair at times. Metal Gear, like any work of fiction daring to express the creator's inner world, is an acquired taste. But it's up to me in this instance to present the dish. So how's it going? Well, for those familiar with the 1987 classic, Snake has just met up with Gray Fox. For those unfamiliar, I won't say more at the risk of spoiling the plot of this adaptation I'm cooking up. Lord knows I did plenty of spoiling for the franchise in my first episode on the way to conveying how Kojima utilizes the unique strengths of the medium to convey his story. I've been doing my best to practice what I've preached, honoring Kojima's world and the tone through which he expresses it, while giving colorations to make it all fun and booky. After all, as we learned last time, literary works are forwarded through the thoughts and minds of its characters. Which leads me to what I'd like to talk about today. One of the four most important characters of any good story, the protagonist. In a video game, the protagonist is always sharing at least part of the spotlight with the player, whether it's Link, Nathan Drake, or literally you. There are certain games that play around with the character acting outside of the player's control, sometimes for humor, and many times for some grand nihilistic gesture of the character the player is influencing being both literally and figuratively out of control. Metal Gear certainly plays around with these themes often in the series, but often in the reverse, characters grappling with the sense that they are never fully in control of their actions. In this way, the context of being a soldier following orders becomes a metaphor for a character within a fictitious world being controlled by the player. All of this is to say that the relationship an audience has to a video game character is unique in the grand scheme of artistic mediums. Luckily for me, however, its closest relative may be that of the written word. Unlike film, readers spend a lot of time with the protagonist. Even shorter novels often take 3 times the length of your average film to complete, and much of that additional time can be spent directly within a character's head. Because many of these responses are player-provoked in a video game, especially in a game with very few cutscenes like the first Metal Gear, Snake is characterized through mechanics and the way he, through the player, overcomes the obstacles set before him. In this way, if we're going all Vogler and Campbell here, a video game story, even in our modern age of cutscenes galore, exists predominantly in the second act. If you're a game fixing to value the player's time, you really have a narrow window for introducing things before the main character is on his or her way and accepting the call and on their quest. Now, I could fill an entire video with more thoughts on that, but I mentioned this to illustrate that by taking out the core mechanics of Metal Gear's gameplay, by making its plot into a literary work, there's a gaping hole left for characterization and conflict, especially in the case of something as simple and succinct as this particular game's plot. To properly transfer the way the game makes you feel to play it, I'm going to have to lean into taking some creative liberties. While I don't want to necessarily add anything that wasn't already there, I do want the story to be colored with an immersive level of specificity. That's even before considering my intended audience, who would not be engaged by a one-to-one recounting of a video game's plot points of constant conflict and combat. Snake fights some soldiers, then he fights some jetpack guys, then he fights a helicopter, then he fights a tank. This leads us into the title of the video. My girlfriend is a hopeless romantic. Dating her is ever the crash course on the female gaze, the beats in a narrative that make a male character very romantic and alluring. To her, moments like these indicate a male character as being caring, selfless, strong yet disciplined, and devoted to the emotional and physical well-being of a beloved ingenue. Originally, I was going to title this video Making Solid Snake Sexy, but I fear that might throw Snake a bit under the bus in terms of his character in the series abroad. After all, anyone familiar with his later games knows ensuring I don't screw up just how sexy Snake is a much more accurate goal here. I want to make sure that the core of what makes Solid Snake super cool stays consistent in this adaptation, that this character will be recognizable and track with his depictions later on. At the same time, I want to find those ooey gooey moments to make Snake ever the debonair ladies man, or rather, my lady's idea of a ladies man. To find Snake's softer side, however, will require giving him more moments to bounce off an ensemble, as the most epic of epic heroes needs a well-rounded cast to define their scale. Now, luckily for me, Kojima knows how to weave a tale, and even in the simplicity of Metal Gear 1, there are these little nods to plot points that an adaptation like this is a perfect opportunity to expand. Ideally, the end product of this story is something someone can read in place of playing the game, but which also leaves some of the more gamey twists intact in case someone is inspired by reading the piece to play the original. After all, there are aspects of the gameplay of Metal Gear I simply won't be able to adapt wholesale beyond, perhaps, a homage. So there you have it, an update on how things are going, and a peek into the process of what I'm mulling over with the piece. I'm excited to see how things turn out, and if you are too, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to make sure you don't miss a thing. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash the like button to tell the algorithm it deserves to see the light. And if you made it all this way, I'd love to know, what was your first Metal Gear? How did you get introduced to the series? If you aren't familiar with it, then here's another one for you. What is your favorite epic romance in fiction? Even if you know Metal Gear, you're welcome to answer both. But either way, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time where, hopefully, I'll be bringing a finished product to the table.